Psychology of a serial killer like Jeffrey Dahmer. Since the early 1990s, there has been a growing awareness of the psychological explanations for why some people become serial killers. The public has been fascinated by the idea of what goes on inside the mind of a person who can commit such horrific crimes. One of the most famous psychological explanations for the serial killing was proposed by the Jeffrey Dahmer, a notorious American serial killer who was active in the 1980s and the early 1990s. Dahmer's case is often used to illustrate the psychological factors that can contribute to the serial killing. Dahmer's story is a fascinating but disturbing example of how mental illness can lead to violence and how difficult it can be to prevent such violence. While the motivations of serial killers are still not fully understood, several theories attempt to explain why someone like Dahmer may have committed such heinous acts. In this video, we will take a closer look at the psychological factors that may have played a role in the Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes. We will also explore how these factors can help to explain the behavior of other serial killers. And we will explore some of these theories and examine the psychology of serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer. So, watch till the end. Who is Jeffrey Dahmer? Jeffrey Dahmer was one of America's most notorious serial killers, killing 17 people between 1978 and 1991. In the early 1990s, he gained notoriety for a series of brutal murders in which he raped, killed, and dismembered his victims. He was captured in 1991 after police found one of his victims alive in his apartment. Dahmer was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and spent the rest of his life in prison. He was eventually killed by another inmate in 1994. Despite his gruesome crimes, Dahmer remains a fascinating figure to many people. Some have even speculated that his atrocities were the result of a mental illness, or that he was simply born evil. He has been the subject of numerous books, movies, and documentaries, and his case continues to be studied by medical and psychological experts to understand what drew him to commit such horrific acts. While Dahmer's crimes are well known, there is still much that we don't know about him. Why did he do what he did? What motivated him to kill? What made him different from other serial killers? These are all questions that continue to puzzle experts today. Whatever the case may be, Dahmer's story is a dark reminder of the potential for evil that exists in all of us. Dahmer's crimes sparked a national conversation about violence and mental illness, and he remains one of the most famous serial killers in history. The psychology of a serial killer. Fewer than 1% of the population are serial killers, but they have captured the public imagination like no other type of criminal. And while we all may be fascinated by the gruesome crimes, there is still much we don't understand about these killers. What drives someone to kill again and again? What kind of person becomes a serial killer? And why do they seem to be disproportionately white and male? These are just some of the questions that psychologists and criminologists are trying to answer. And while no one answer fits all cases, each serial killer is motivated by different things. However, some common psychological factors can contribute to the development of a serial killer. These include things like a history of abuse, mental illness, and a lack of empathy. Serial killers often have a deep need for power and control, and they may view killing as a way to achieve those things. In some cases, they may also get a sense of satisfaction or pleasure from killing. Several different psychological theories have been proposed to explain why someone may become a serial killer. Some of these theories suggest that the serial killers are born with certain personality traits that make them more likely to engage in this type of behavior. Others suggest that early childhood experiences or exposure to violent crime can lead someone to become a serial killer. The truth is that we may never fully understand the psychology of a serial killer. But by studying these theories, we can try to get a better understanding of the motivations and thought processes behind this type of behavior. While the psychology of a serial killer is still not fully understood, research into this area can help us to better understand these individuals and hopefully prevent future crimes from happening. Psychological factors may have played a role in Jeffrey Dahmer crimes. Jeffrey Dahmer was one of America's most notorious serial killers, convicted of killing 17 people between 1978 and 1991. While there is no definitive answer as to what drove Dahmer to commit such heinous crimes, there are some psychological factors that may have played a role. Dahmer grew up in a dysfunctional home where he experienced physical and emotional abuse. He was also bullied and teased mercilessly by his classmates, leading to feelings of isolation and resentment. Dahmer struggled with mental illness and had a difficult time forming attachments with other people. These factors may have contributed to Dahmer's crimes, as may have been seeking to exert power over others and to create a sense of control in his life. Additionally, Dahmer was known to have had a difficult relationship with his father, which may have further contributed to his feelings of rage and isolation. Dahmer also had a history of sexual abuse. He was molested by a neighbor when he was 8 years old, and he was raped by a 19-year-old man when he was 18. This type of trauma can lead to feelings of shame, guilt, and self-loathing, which may have played a role in the Dahmer's development. While we will never know for sure what motivated Jeffrey Dahmer to commit such atrocities, understanding the psychological factors at play may give some insight into the mind of a serial killer. Now, these factors can help to explain the behavior of other serial killers. It's important to note that not all serial killers share the same set of motivations and factors that contribute to their behavior. However, some commonalities can help to explain the behavior of other serial killers. Four main factors are often cited as contributing to the behavior of serial killers: mental illness, childhood trauma, social isolation, and a desire for people and control. Mental illness is thought to be a major factor in the behavior of serial killers. Many serial killers suffer from some form of mental illness, such as psychosis, schizophrenia, or personality disorders. These illnesses can cause them to become detached from reality, making it more difficult for them to empathize with their victims. Childhood trauma is another factor that can contribute to the behavior of serial killers. Many serial killers experience some form of trauma during their childhood, whether it was abuse, neglect, or even witnessing violence. These trauma can have a profound effect on their development, leading them to act out in violent ways as adults. In some cases, the trauma may even trigger a dissociative state, which can make it difficult for the individual to distinguish between reality and fantasy. This can lead to further violence as the individual seeks to act out their fantasies. Social isolation is one of the factors that can contribute to the behavior of serial killers. Serial killers often have a history of being socially isolated, and this isolation can lead to them feeling disconnected from other people. When serial killers feel disconnected from other people, they may be more likely to kill because they see it as a way to establish a connection with someone. The desire for power and control. Many experts believe that the desire for power and control is another factor that can contribute to the behavior of serial killers. In some cases, serial killers may kill to feel a sense of power and control over their victims. This need for power and control can often be linked to feelings of insecurity and inferiority. These factors can help to explain the behavior of some serial killers. but they can't explain the behavior of all serial killers. We still have much to learn about why people become serial killers. And until we have more answers, we can only speculate about the motivations of these criminals. What motivated Jeffrey Dahmer? The answer may never truly be known, but several theories have been put forth. Some believe that Dahmer was motivated by a desire to control and dominate his victims. Others believe that he was motivated by sexual hunger and a need to possess his victims. Still, others believe that Dahmer was simply mentally ill and that his crimes were a result of his mental state. Unfortunately, we may never know for sure. Dahmer himself said that he couldn't explain his actions, and experts have offered a variety of explanations, from mental illness to a desire for power and control. Whatever the case may be, Dahmer's crimes remain a shocking reminder of the dark side of the human nature. How did Jeffrey Dahmer select his victims? It's still not fully understood how Dahmer selects his victims, but there are some theories. One theory is that Dahmer was attracted to victims who reminded him of his father, whom he disliked. Another theory is that Dahmer would often select his victims based on certain characteristics. He typically chose victims who were alone, intoxicated, or vulnerable in some way. Dahmer would also target men who were roughly the same age as him. Most of Dahmer's victims were young, white men who were either homeless or living transient lifestyles. He often lured them back to his apartment with a promise of alcohol or money. Dahmer also targeted men who were gay or perceived to be gay. He believed that he could convert them into heterosexual by killing and dismembering them. Whatever the reason, Dahmer's victims were all young men or boys who were vulnerable and alone. He would lure them into his home with promises of money or sex, and then he would kill them. Dahmer's crimes were heinous and unforgivable, and his victims will never be forgotten. While the reasons behind the Dahmer's killings spree are still unknown, his selection process for victims provides some insight into the mind of a serial killer. What was the impact of the Jeffrey Dahmer's murders on society? In the aftermath of his crimes, Dahmer became a symbol of evil, and his case raised important questions about how society deals with the dangerous criminals. Dahmer's murders had a profound impact on the society. They brought to light the issue of hate crimes against minorities, and they faced people to confront the dark side of the human nature. Dahmer's case also showed the importance of mental health treatment and the dangers of untreated mental illness. Dahmer's case also had a major impact on how the criminal justice system deals with serial killers. In the wake of his trial, several new laws were passed that made it easier to track and prosecute serial killers. Dahmer's case also led to new theories about how to identify and catch serial killers before they can strike again. The implications of Dahmer's case for our understanding of violence and mental illness. The case of Jeffrey Dahmer is one of the most shocking and disturbing cases in the history of crime. What makes his case so unsettling is not just the brutality of his crimes, but also the fact that he seemed to be a completely normal guy. He had a job and an apartment and was even considered polite and friendly by his neighbors. So, what caused Dahmer to snap and become one of the most infamous serial killers in history? This case has led to a lot of debate and speculation about the causes of violence and mental illness. Some believe that Dahmer was simply evil and that there is no explanation for his crimes. Others believe that his mental illness played a role in his crimes and that he could have been helped if he had received proper treatment. Dahmer's case also raised important questions about the nature of violence and mental illness. Can mental illness lead to violence? And if so, how can we prevent mentally ill individuals from harming others? There are complex questions with no easy answers, but the case of the Jeffrey Dahmer can help us better understand the relationship between violence and mental illness, and how we can prevent future tragedies. The psychology of serial killer like Jeffrey Dahmer is extremely complex. There are a variety of factors that contribute to someone becoming a serial killer, and Dahmer's case is no different. Dahmer was a highly intelligent individual who was able to mask his dark desires from his work. However, ultimately, his mental illness and toxic home life led him down a path of violence and murder. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks for watching.